presentation is about how to make our existing landscape more earth kind. As Lisa mentioned, EarthKind is a trademark, and it's something that is really been developed as part of the horticultural sciences program at Texas A&M University. So this slide deck, actually not the deck itself, but the information for it, is courtesy of one of their professors, Tim Hartman. And so they provide the information to be used for slides if you want to do that. So jumping right in, the things that make your garden or your yard more earth kind. I don't know, they didn't really explain if it was in order, but I think it kind of might be based on the information I've read around it. But mulching, it's incredibly important. And adding just a 3-layer inch of mulch from plant-based sources, not the plastic mulch you get in the garden center, but actual plant-based mulch, like hardwood, will significantly reduce the amount of water required in the landscape. It'll help with preventing weeds and erosion. It actually, I thought it was very interesting, modifies the soil temperature. And it also serves as a supply of the organic matter for the soil beneath it. You may notice that your mulch kind of disappears over time and you have to add more. That's because it's actually decomposing, and that organic matter actually feeds your soil. So it is a slow means of fertilizing too. It's also something that you can do easily with your current landscaping. You can pretty much add, mulch no matter what you've already done with your landscaping. One of the things I really wanted to point out is that you can get mulch many times from either your municipal site or one of the utility sites at very low cost or free. Up here in Denton County, I can go to what we call the Eco Works at the Denton landfill, and I can get everything my pickup truck will hold for $15. So that's really a great deal for being able to mulch everything really thoroughly. And that 3 inches does make a difference. I've tried to do less than that in the past, and it is just, it doesn't work as well. So the next item that they recommend is low volume irrigation. Either the micro drip or the micro irrigation heads or the drip irrigation. And, their research shows that it's 90% more effective than traditional sprinkler systems. Now, obviously that it doesn't work everywhere. So, you have to choose where it can and can't be put, but where you can use it, it really maximizes your benefit of adding the water, and it minimizes things like the runoff and the evaporation. Something I never thought about is it reduces the salinity damage and the disease on foliage, because it keeps the water and any soil that might splash off of the plant's leaves. And I know I particularly have problems with canna lilies, and being able to, oh, sorry, Lisa's saying stop messing with the pointer. I apologize, folks. I have a habit of doing that.
No worries.
I have canna lilies that always end up with this, I don't know, disease of some kind. And I've been told that it's because they get too much water on the leaves. So I'm going to be really careful to just use drip irrigation or the lines in those beds from now on, try and reduce that. One of the things that makes this easy is you can get a large variety of the micro drip or the just plain drip irrigation tubing like this, either online or even in a lot of garden stores now. Number 3, and I've heard this before and I'm guilty of not necessarily doing it like I should, but regularly assessing or having a professional assess your irrigation system's functioning, because just having things like a leak or a sprinkler head that's damaged or misaligned can really mess up how it's watering in your yard. The other important thing to really consider is measuring the output and making sure it's covering where you think it's covering, and making sure it's covering in a uniform manner. That will help you determine how long you should run your system for at any point in time. And it can be as simple as putting out a can. In this case, they used a tuna can in this picture as just something that you can use to catch and measure what your irrigation system is putting out. They recommend a low, small can, like a tuna can, so that you're not using, if you use a taller can, you're blocking some of the water potentially from falling into it correctly. So if not a tuna can, a shallow dish or something like that to use as a measurement device. But when I've seen it done and seen pictures of it, I mean, it looks a little funny because you've got these little cans all over the yard. But when I actually did it, and like I said, I haven't done it as often as I should, I found that there were parts of the yard that were getting a whole lot more water from the irrigation system than others were. So it did make a difference in trying to adjust my sprinkler system, the time that it would go off, the amount of time I would leave it on, or how often, how many days in a row it would, water, kind of thing. So just knowing what your irrigation system's doing is really a big benefit. The presentation talks a lot about cycle and soak watering and programming your irrigation system to split the run times into shorter cycles, because the way that saves you water is it allows the water to soak into the soil better than if you apply it all at once. And especially if you're dealing with a clay soil or something where you end up with a lot of runoff, or a situation where you have a steep grade, it will also keep all the water from just starting to run off, right away, and you will get more of it actually soaking into your landscape. A lot of the irrigation controllers that they're installing now have the ability to set up cycle and soak schedules. If not, it's a little bit more work and you have to go in and program it to water more frequently. So, let it run through the entire cycle and then come back and run through a second time, but both times at a smaller amount of time. And if you're doing watering yourself, just simply doing, a more frequent move of your sprinkler system, your manual sprinklers. The 5th item that they talk about is integrated pest management. And that's just using a balanced approach to using cultural, biological, and mechanical control measures. They stress, and pretty much every serious gardener that I've listened to on YouTube or iPodcasts or anything like that, says just use chemical control as an absolute last resort. Use it only when you have so many pests that there's just really no other way you're able to control them. And I know if you're like me and have had a bad experience in the past with grasshoppers, your first, or actually Kyle's first reaction when he sees the first grasshopper is nuke 'em. But that's really not all that great for the rest of your landscape and your plants, because when you're using a lot of chemicals, you're actually killing the beneficial things as well as the ones that are not beneficial. So, they list strategies here of using pest and disease tolerant plants as a good place to start. Preserving the pest natural enemies, and we'll hear more about that next month when we hear about bats in the garden. They eat an amazing number of insects and things that are detrimental, like the grasshoppers, to us. And then actually physically removing pests, going out and picking off, caterpillars that you consider damaging, or grasshoppers, etc. But as we heard just last month from Judy, some of those, even though we might not like them, we need to leave some of those caterpillars alone if we want the beautiful butterflies and the things that come with them. So it's all an integrated process, as they mention here. You really have to look at kind of how the whole picture fits together, and do you really want to get rid of that pest? Because is that pest, taking care of a worse pest, or is it, becoming a beautiful butterfly in its next cycle of life, etc. Composting, and I know this shows multiple, type composters, everything from simple bins to the composters that you roll and the composters you tumble, etc. But converting your yard waste, instead of putting it in bags that go to the landfill, is really beneficial in both directions. It gives you a valuable soil amendment, and it keeps more of those bags out of the landfill. Remember that the things that are good in compost are once living materials. So compost really gives a tremendous amount of nutrients back to the soil. And it's in a slow release form, so it really helps improve the structure of the soil overall. Fertilizing, and this is another one I'm not very good about remembering to do, is doing your fertilizing based on what you actually really need. And that means start out by doing soil tests. Take samples in. Our ag extensions will definitely give you an evaluation. A lot of the landscape companies, like Callaway's and some of those are willing to, do an analysis of soil for you as well. But actually doing that analysis tells you what specific nutrients you need. And that can help you choose the right fertilizers, and the right fertilizers for the right time of the year, which means you're not spending extra money on putting fertilizer in your yard that you don't need. It'll help you, balance out the right types, and the less fertilizer you're applying that's not natural, like from your compost or your mulch, etc., will help reduce pollution in the form of runoff and ground contamination. So less is more sometimes. This is one of those cases, and being able to put the right fertilizer on and not the rest of it is really beneficial. Rainwater harvesting is listed here as number 8, and rainwater is great for our ponds. It's, great for the plants around our ponds. It's really wonderful if you put it on things like ferns that are too sensitive for some of the, salts and chlorine and things like that that are in our tap water. So it can actually allow you to be more successful with sensitive plants. And it's something that's pretty simple. We've heard in a presentation about a year ago about a very complex and elaborate rainwater harvesting system, but as the ag extensions point out, it can be as simple as just capturing rainwater in a barrel from your downspouts. It might mean changing the location of your downspout a little bit, not taking it all the way to the ground, shortening it up a little bit so it goes into a barrel like this. But then that leaves you, rainwater that you can use, around your garden. Now, unfortunately, in a system like this, you're out there in the rain yourself, replacing those barrels on some of our Texas rains where, you don't get them real frequently, but when you do, you get enough to fill many barrels all at once. So, that's one of those that you have to kind of balance out what's practical for your own environment and everything. But I just really wish I was not putting so much tap water into my pond and on my gardens. So I'm going to be personally trying to figure out how to use more rainwater more effectively. Then preparing the planting areas and thinking about the natural flow of the land, incorporating, the compost, creating mounds so that you're allowing proper runoff for certain type soils. Oops, sorry. Here I am moving my mouse again all over the place. I was trying to get rid of the little thing at the bottom, but it talks about even just 12 inches of difference in height, will allow for quite a bit of improved plant performance, especially in some of our clay soils and areas where you have drainage problems. And things like roses do much better in a bed that's mounded like this. They don't like having their feet kept, wet all the time. So anything that is excess will drain off. And as it's captured here under the picture, it actually, adds some interest to the landscape, not to have everything just completely flat. Item number 10, probably one of the easiest and often overlooked, is your turf maintenance. Keeping your grass at a little bit higher level, but mowing more frequently keeps your grass healthier by promoting a deeper root system. It reduces the stress to the grass, and it actually provides shade for the surface of the soil, which is something I had never realized. And when you do those things, it actually reduces your need for water. I know one of the things that I've heard a lot of complaints about are, well, if I put those, if I just mow and leave the grass clippings out there, it creates ugly, piles, etc. But if you're doing it frequently, which is one of the big things that they suggest, is very regular mowing, but taking less off at a time, you're really mulching in those clippings, and you're returning that organic matter to the soil, and it won't clump up and make those big brown thatches that we don't want to see. So all in all, these are the things that the Ag Extension Service recommends as easy things that can be done to improve the quality of our yards, our gardens, as they're already existing. If you go online to the Aggie Horticulture at tamu.edu, there is an EarthKind challenge, but there's also a lot of additional information out there, and it will help you assess where you are with your current landscape and its effect on the environment. And it will also give you additional resources out here. If you're looking to do things like create a new garden space, ideas on what you can do kind of from the beginning to make it more ecologically friendly, etc. So I would encourage everybody to go out there to this website, write this one down, and take this EarthKind challenge. It's kind of interesting to see what your own scores do. Any questions? I'll move on to this is one of the gardens that they feature that is considered an EarthKind, and as Lisa said, it features some of those roses that are actually branded as EarthKind.
I think too, a lot of, EarthKind is very related to, a lot of us in this club have certifications related to wildlife habitats and that sort of thing. And, what can we do to lessen our footprint, so that we're not taking up so much space on the planet. So I really appreciate the work of the EarthKind. I wanted to share a couple things. So the drip irrigation number 2, I added drip irrigation last year. Oh, I saw that, wine, Harv. You need to share with everyone. I added a drip irrigation last year to my garden before I went on a kind of a longer trip away in sort of a hot time of year. I can't tell you, I wish I had done that 9 years ago, because it made my life so much better. There's a little orbit timer out there on the faucet. It goes on for 15 minutes, 2 times a day. And I'm thinking, based on what Rebecca said, I need to probably pull it back to maybe 9 or 10, but I didn't really have any guidance on, what would be appropriate. And in the front, I've got a lot of succulents and less water needy plants because it faces southwest. In the back, I get a lot of shade from the house and all of that. So it can afford a little more water back there, or a little more water needy plants. Anyway, I just cannot extol the benefits of putting in an irrigation. And I know some people have had some experiences with the do-it-yourself stuff, but I've got some resources that we can use from Rooted In, like some wholesale resources. I actually got everything because I'm very, I don't want to just buy it on the internet. I need to touch it and feel it and figure out what parts work with what, for this plan or that plan or whatever. And so all of mine was purchased from the 2 big box stores. I can tell you what I like, and I can definitely tell you what I don't like. So, but I won't do that on a recording. So, just get to me personally and I'll be sure to share. And I know Kimberly's
Lisa, maybe
experience.
That's a topic for a future, presentation where we dig a little bit deeper into the, irrigation piece of it.
Well, and I'll tell you what, there's a gentleman named Patrick with Rooted In that does a brilliant presentation. I don't know, what he charges for, a group like this, but I took his class from McKinney and there was no cost to me. So we need to look into that. So put that in your notes.
If you're
going to do a drip system, I would recommend doing it yourself and doing it a little bit at a time, because my first irrigation system, I let this guy talk me into a professional drip system. And I told him at the time I didn't think it was going to work well the way he was talking about doing it. He said, "Oh yes," he said, "I'm the expert. I know exactly what I'm doing." I said, and he
blah blah blah.
Yeah, charged me $5,000 for this system, and it was the worst thing. My plant started dying left and right. So,
and it was maybe $400 worth of material, I guarantee.
Probably, yeah. So I wound up with something of a hybrid. I've got a few little places that I still have some drip, but mostly the type of plants I have, you just can't use it with it. I wound up having to tear that one all out and have somebody else come out and do another one. So you just need to know your plants and research and see what type of system is going to do best, what type of individual things, like you were talking about. There's different little things. There's little sprayers, there's drips, there's, you know, all kinds of different things. So,
well, and they've got some little picture on there that tells you how far they spurt out. But I'm telling you, it depends on how many little things you got plugged into that main hose as to how far they spurt out.
yeah.
And sometimes they get like a little grain of dirt or whatever in there, or a cat hair or dog hair or whatever, a bird feather, that, like, I have one that goes up and I can see the water pattern on the ground, and it's supposed to be a full 360, and I'm telling you, it's doing 45 at best. And I'll go out and check it, and it's spinning. But, you know, it's kind of like our koi ponds. It's something that I agree with Kimberly. You need to kind of do it yourself so you know where it is. And all of us, I know every one of you, if I asked you what your garden looked like 2 years ago, it doesn't look anything like it does now, right? It's always evolving, and the plants get bigger, and it's like, oh crap, I got to move this over here, you know, and I need a bigger spread, or I need a fuller thrust, or, you know, whatever that might look like. I also wanted to share on fertilizing. Rebecca hit on the point of fertilizing for what you really need. And I think that's something that Howard Garrett supports, as well as Neil Sperry. But what they didn't say is the kibosh on weed and feeds. Don't do that.
No,
Don't do that.
Mm-mm.
You can't nourish and kill at the same time. That's like, it's my opinion, but I think that's the most preposterous product on the market.
There was a house down the street from me when I first moved in here to Richardson. They had these two big magnolia trees in the front yard. Over the years, I watched their grass got greener and greener and greener, and those trees started dying.
Yeah.
I said, I know exactly what they're doing. And they lost both trees. So yeah, big bad news. Something else I would mention too, you mentioned Howard Garrett. Something that he cautioned against doing was the mulch that is, you know, at your local city or whatever. Because the problem with that stuff is that everybody contributes. That's where they take all the tree trimmings and toss it in there. And you may get everything from tree pests, you know, to crabgrass or whatever people have tossed out of their yards. And both of the experts, I think, usually recommend that if you're going to make your own mulch, do it from your own tree trimmings or clippings or whatever from your own yard, that you know what's going into it.
I think that's a good point, Kimberly. So when I've gone to the city and got big, you know, truckloads of mulch, because I have done that. I used to have a lot, for those of you that have been to my house, I had a lot larger property before. And so I would go get 2 or 3 truckloads like Rebecca's referring to. And, you know, sometimes that's just what you got to do. But it is typically being shredded. And there's a lot of construction lumber that's out there too. So sometimes you'll get some nails and stuff. But it's not probably properly heated up, and all that yucky fauna and flora and some of the things you don't want in mulch is not eradicated in there sometimes. So
I would say if you're having problems with that from where you're getting yours, come on up to Denton. To
go somewhere else.
EcoWorks.
Yeah.
EcoWorks up here is absolutely excellent. The stuff I've gotten from them has been very high quality.
So that's a good point. Just ask questions. So the one I've gone to is the Collin County one, which is Texas Best or something like that. It's very convenient. And, you know, sometimes it just doesn't matter. But like Kimberly, I've experienced a lot of, what's that annoyance grass that comes up? A sedge.
Grass.
No, the sedge.
Nutsedge.
grass is bad
The
too.
nutsedge, the one that drives you nuts. That
Yeah.
seems to always travel in that mulch.
Yeah,
And
it does.
it's got to be heated up and turned the right amount to really eradicate that from mulch.
Well,
And spores come in from all over the place.
That's what I got from, of all places, that was Living Earth that makes their
Oh,
own.
whoop. Don't talk about that.
Yeah. Oh, well.
We're recording.
I didn't have a single blade of nut grass in my yard till I got a big truckload of mulch from them, and I've fought nut grass for the last 20 years. And as Howard Garrett said, the only way to get rid of nut grass is to pull it all up by hand, put it in a pile in the center of your driveway, set fire to it,
Blast it.
sweep up the ashes, put them in a locked container, and drop them in the ocean.
Yeah. Oh, not the ocean. Let's put it.
No.
Yeah.
Let's put it
That's how
somewhere in
bad
the life.
it is.
That's wild. And the third point I wanted to say to everyone is, what turf? Have any? Oh, I love my garden. So what looks like turf is actually plastic.
I saw some of that tonight. The restaurant we went to, all out in their parking lot, they had converted over to that. And I said, that is so smart, because it's probably saving them a lot of money in maintenance.
Well, for me, I had such small areas that were turf. I will tell you, I still get weeds right along the edge of the sidewalk between my I have faux turf, guys, in case
Wondered
you
about that.
I get weeds along there, and then every now and then there's some places kind of in the middle. I almost want to leave the weeds, just to give that natural look. But I can't tell you how many times I talk to people on pond tour while we're hosting, or just in general, and people find out that I have a koi pond, when they're like, well, how much, especially if we're in a drought, how much water are you using for that? Blah, 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 blah. And I can assure you that there is way less water used to top off a koi pond or to take that 10% out and refresh it than there is with what you have to service turf with. Turf is just a water waster for so, and I love turf. I think it's beautiful, but
especially St.
it
Augustine
sucks it
grass.
up. Absolutely. And that's my favorite kind, Harv.
No,
If I'm gonna have it, I want the St. Augustine.
When we moved into this house, the neighbor across the street was a retired guy, and he used to sit out every day and water his yard. And we did not run the sprinklers so that we have this gorgeous green yard, because it's just so wasteful. And he called me across the street one day and demonstrated how to properly water the yard. And I stood there with my neighbor as he's explaining how the water goes on the yard. And the neighbors, the people who lived where we do before us, had a beautiful yard, and it was very green. And this is how they watered. He's showing me with the hose. And I didn't laugh then, but I laugh every time I think about it now. It's just the funniest thing. Come over here and I'll show you how to do this. We need to fix this yard. And I was like, okay, it's dying now, baby. I'm turning.
I just went out and tilled mine all under and stuck cardboard on top of it, I kept enlarging the garden bigger and bigger and bigger to where the turf area literally is like this big. It's way smaller than my pond in the front and the back. And
I'm getting there. One of these days, I think I'm
Absolutely.
enough that that's what I'm going to do.
Absolutely. And again, I love sod, but I can't express to you guys the freedom, how EarthKind I feel for not, my life does not revolve around line trimming, edging, and watering and mowing that little tiny green space. I'd rather spend my time out there weeding, quite
Do
frankly.
you have trouble with the city, like the ordinances about how tall things can get?
No,
Because I'm really concerned. We do have a lawn in addition to the pond in the back, but I really worry about code compliance coming around and nailing us for having things over a foot tall.
I would ask you to, I would recommend that you follow Randy Johnson on Facebook.
Okay.
He's a
pitcher, isn't he? Didn't he pitch?
no. He's always pictured with a little Chinese hat. He's got long hair. He used to run the agriculture program at the zoo, and then at the Texas Discovery Garden, and then the zoo. He's got his own nursery. He raises a lot of monarch healthy milkweed, because there's a lot of not
Right.
monarch
Yeah.
healthy milkweed, as I'm sure you know. And he's got a big garden where he sells plants and such out in Garland, Mesquite. I'm going to call it East.
I'll look him up. Thank you.
Please do.
See, that's why I
But
love
look
this
for
group.
him. He's got the
So much info.
really very traditional Chinese hat that he always wears. I don't believe he's of Asian descent, but he's got a lot of great little videos that he posts, and he's got a very deep Southern accent. I just absolutely adore him. But he's a really good person to follow about all that. He also posts a lot of stuff about how to circumvent the cities coming down on you about that stuff. So having your yard look like ass, with weeds, just know that all flowers are referred to as weeds in some texts, but it better be a pretty weed for you to be able to pass it by. And it's the HOAs that really get their stuff in a twist. And when you have a property and you've spent X $100,000, or you spent $30,000, or you spent 1.5 million, whatever it is, you want your neighbors to kind of take an interest in making it look nice, because you don't want your property value to dip. I know when I walk through my neighborhood, I'm very judgmental about that house and that house and that house. And there's some that they're not trying to be naturalists. They're just lazy, or just don't want to spend the money on that, or just don't care about that. They don't care what the outside looks like. So,
And some people don't.
You got to
Some
find
people-
some place midway, because you are living in a community, and you need to
Right.
kind of.
I think I mentioned before, our HOA went in and decided that the land scrapers went in and yanked out all our natives.
Well, that's what, I used to sell homes for a living for a builder for 15, 20 years. And that's what developers do. Scrape the land, start over. For anybody that sews or does any kind of making or crafting, it is a lot easier to start from scratch than
Right.
to rebuild something.
Right.
So that's
I'm not-
kind of the thought process, and it's kind of cheaper in the long run. And
Well,
it's kind of all
unless you're trying to talk about those, 50 to 100-year-old trees they're taking down, that just makes me sick anytime I look at one of those builders.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Evelyn, I saw your note in the chat. What was the big reminder for you? Take yourself off mute.
I need to fertilize.
Okay, it's important to
I have
feed the
trouble.
animals, right? And the plants.
I look at all the different plants as needing different fertilizers. If they're a big bloomer, they'll need something different than a grass will, and so I have trouble remembering which ones to use. And so I just don't want to mess with it.
And more often, the big bloomers need it more often, because typically what they need in a fertilizer is more water soluble. So every time you water, it goes away.
Right.
Same thing with the vitamins that we take. There's certain things we need to take daily because it's water soluble, and it just kind of, goes out with the waste.
Yeah.
So we've got to do that daily. And then there's certain things that, maybe we just need a flu shot once a year. And that's not food. I know that. So
I'm having some of
don't
the
anybody send me a
problems.
memo on that.
I'm having some of the problems y'all mentioned in a different sort of way, though. My husband and I are both getting older and we can't do what we used to. So we eventually hired someone to help us with the yard. Well, only the front yard has grass. The side yard at the back and the big yard with the koi pond, they don't have any, not a blade of grass. But we do have a multitude of trees.
You're
And
right there
so-
on a creek too, right?
No, well, there's a creek way across the street, but not on our property.
Okay. So you're opposite of where Larry lives? You're not on the same side as he is?
I'm across the street from Larry.
Okay. Okay.
And so we hired this man and he wants to decide which plants I can keep.
Oh, heck no.
And he's big, heavy with the weed eater. And he insists on mowing in my backyard, and I don't have a blade of grass, but he wants to mow to pick up all the leaves.
Yeah, no.
So he mows down trees and many native plants that I've tried to plant from seed. And I'm having a big problem with it.
Yeah.
But I need the help. So
So I think you might have to find somebody else to help
I
you.
really
Because,
need to find a gardener versus a lawn man.
well, and it's hard. It's hard because these lawn maintenance guys just want to go through and mow everything down. I know there's been a lot of, line trimming and they mow stuff down. I can't tell you how many garden groups I'm on Facebook, and people's natives and prized plants have been destroyed by a weed eater, especially this time of year,
Some
because
of the plants I've grown up more than 25 years and they're gone now. And my friends and relatives tells me, well, if you want to get help, you're just going to have to put up with this stuff. And I really want a gardener versus a lawn man.
right. Well, and I think you just have to lock your back gate and say, I don't want you back there at all. I just want you to do this and charge me accordingly,
Yeah.
and just sacrifice the front yard if you have to, if you have to look at it that way.
Yeah, well, we don't have much in the flower bed in the front anymore. So,
Is he mowed it down?
yeah, and weed eat it. So,
Wow. Well, I'm sorry about that, Evelyn. That's why I don't, I'm still doing it myself, and I'm so hard-headed, but I don't trust anybody. Plus I've got all these dogs. There's no way in heck I'm letting anybody in my back gate. I don't trust them to lock it. I don't trust them to close the gate,
right.
and
it becomes a big problem.
yeah, those dogs are way more important than a plant or a fish. I swear, or a bird or anything else in my yard. The dogs are priority, probably even over me. And I just don't trust the backyard. I got a doggy door that somebody could get through, any human size just about, that I'm just not leaving the gate unlocked. That's just not happening. So anyway. Rebecca, you got lots of thanks in the chat.
Appreciate it. I mean, some of it is somewhat basic stuff, but it is a good reminder. And, there's always good tidbits in there that we, don't know, or that we don't think about or realize the impact of.
Well, a lot of it's just back to basics and reminding us of what's important, there's been a couple of times where I've taken the shortcut and just gotten the weed and feed because that's all they had. And there's always a problem with that stuff. I just don't even know how they sell that, but.
Well, and like I caught myself saying a couple of times during the presentation, I mean, I'd put it together and it was still like, yeah, and I still don't remember to do this, even though I'm going through it, I realize that some of it I don't do as diligently as I should, but it does help when you do. Like you said, you pay the price if you don't.
Well, and I think it's just all about what do we mostly do, so anyway, are there any other questions, guys? That's a cool top, Evelyn.
Thank you.
I just realized that's really cool.
They call it butterfly fabric.
I like it.
I'm sorry, eyelash fabric.
Oh, eyelash. Okay.
Eyelash,
Cool. Yeah, it's good.
You
Very
can just kind of
frou-frou.
lift it up.
It's cool. Harv, I love yours too. Jim, I can't see yours, but I'm sure you look marvelous. Oh, there he is.
Face is black.
Oh, everybody freeze. He broke the internet. I'm gonna let you guys go unless you have some more visiting or questions for Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca. It was an awesome presentation.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
You're welcome.
Good night,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.